Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the DNA Decoded group call.
Hi, I'm Crystal, Dr. Sam's health coach, and I want to introduce Dr. Sam because he is an incredible functional medicine doctor, and he brings a really unique blend of science based expertise and personal experience with a little bit of humor into his practice. And he's personally gone through a lot of health challenges in the past and has learned how to optimize his health through diet and genetics. At this point in his career, he's helped hundreds of people, and he is absolutely dedicated to helping you too. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Today is a very special day. We're going to cover our Black Friday announcement.
So make sure you stay until the end to learn more.
We're going to talk about several things here. We've got why people dealing with stubborn inflammation, troublesome weight gain, food sensitivities, what diet is best for you. And we've got a very unique opportunity here with this type of genetics test where people are coming to us with functional labs or genetics first, but then we realize that they go hand in hand with each other. And the reason why I like to focus on the genetics is that it's really kind of a foundational guide for how people begin and will continue on through their entire health journey because your genes, your genetic blueprint doesn't change. How you engage with your genes does change based on your lifestyle. Then you can influence how your entire body responds. And the good news about a genetics test is that you only need to do this test once, and then you've got all the results for life. The test itself is really, really easy and straightforward. You just swab your cheeks, send in the test kit, and then we've got a back-end portal that has a ton of educational and informational videos that go through the gene variants, your results. And then we've got these monthly calls that we do live coaching with myself and Crystal. You can receive support on these calls.
So, we just want to give you a glimpse of what you'll receive if you join DNA Decoded. So, as you can see here, it's an entire program with many videos that are explaining genetics, what are gene variations, what are epigenetics, which is your control over your nutrition and lifestyle and how that impacts optimizing your genetics. We also, of course, have these group health coaching calls every month where you can ask questions about your genetics, and they're recorded. So if you can't make it live, they'll be here in this section to rewatch. And then you're also going to get a module each month on topics that are really foundational while you're waiting for your results. So hydration, high protein breakfast, sleep, etc. There are videos, master classes, and handouts that come with every module so that if you're a visual learner or auditory, you're getting both in this course. Once you do get your results, you can scroll down to the DNA Decoded library, and there are videos on how to read your genetics report where Dr. Sam goes through an entire report and how to break down each gene and what to do about it. And you can see here green, yellow, and red dots. Those are explained as well. Each section, so liver, gluten, lactose. You can go in and watch your video based on your dot to see what it means and what you can do about it.
So when we cover one particular topic that's close to my heart, which is this the concept of methylation, and it's a real big word right now in the kind of the public sphere. Methylation gives a lot of publicity and a lot of fanfare, but the reality is that methylation is not as important as people think it is. It just has more of a celebrity status. Methylation is actually downstream from inflammation. And what that means is that people talk about, oh my God, methylation does this and this and this. We got to focus on that. The reality is that people generally just need to focus on dealing with their inflammation. Not, and the methylation issues can meaningfully improve by addressing the inflammation first. There's other forms of inflammation as well. For example, histamines. So you learn in your genetics report your relationship to histamine. So histamine is the body's flood switch that it's part of the inflammation pathway. So basically, if a bee stings you, then and your arm swells up, the bee did not inject a half quart of water into your arm. What happened was that the uh, bee injected venom, and then the body has to quickly dilute the venom as much as it can, so the concentrated venom doesn't melt through muscle, nerve, you know, veins, arteries, etc. And so your body floods it, and the histamine is that switch to flood the area. So if people are genetically sensitive to histamine, which means they take on much more water than is necessary, then anything that provokes histamine, whether it's certain foods that have high histamine or certain foods that that make your body generate more histamine or foods that block your ability to break down histamine, then you're going to start to swell with water. And a lot of people who struggle with weight, they may have things that really, really increase your body's reactivity. You won't have caloric weight, so exercise won't help. It's just one of these types of weights that exercise won't help because it's water retention in response to perceived venom, not lack of exercise. If you are genetically sensitive to histamine, then if you change your diet nutrients to being antihistamine, then you can watch as weight that was histamine related, water retention just shaves off. And Crystal had a direct experience about this and lost 5 pounds of inflammation. So, Krista, do you want to say anything about what it was like going onto the antihistamine diet?
Yeah, so I have a red dot in histamine. I normally eat low histamine anyway, but I decided to do a stricter no histamine diet and take extra vitamin C, which helps reduce histamine, and drink really strong nettles tea, which I'm drinking right now every day. And I lost 5 pounds of inflammation, but I also noticed my stomach got a lot flatter, like the puffiness in my face went down, the kind of swelling around my ring, my fingers went down, more mental clarity, better sleep, better energy, better focus, all from just eating a strict antihistamine diet. So it was pretty great. And I've been keeping it going. And I noticed that when I start to feel any histamine symptoms start to creep up, then I make sure that I go on a stricter diet for at least a few days, and bump up the vitamin C and nettles tea. And that usually will help me to stay balanced.
Totally. So, thank you for sharing. And how hard was it to do an antihistamine diet?
It's really hard at first, but it's not hard for me now because I know what to eat and I know what I like. So I'll just stick to the same recipes that I know don't trigger any kind of response for me. It does
Yeah.
take some trial and error at the beginning though.
Yeah, we have a complete antihistamine elimination diet available for people, and we have a method to make it easy for people. So certain health, air quotes, health foods are high in histamine, like avocado, for example. So, I mean, I actually just did a comedy set about 2 weeks ago, criticizing avocados for their high histamine content. I did it at great personal risk because I was in Boulder when I performed that. I needed a security escort to my e-bike afterwards. Uh, so the way that there's a lot of high histamine foods that are considered air quotes healthy, but and so people can get very stressed out when they see the list of things that are high histamine. But the way to make it winnable is you just pick the top 10 high histamine foods that really, really meaningfully add to your quality of life, and you just cut the rest. And then you can reduce the volume of those 10 high histamine foods, and then it becomes really winnable. That dosage matters. So the fewer the less amount you have of higher histamine foods, the better it's going to be. So you can still just reduce it down and still have a meaningful benefit. One of my former, she's given me permission to talk about this, but my former intern, Michaela, she has a master's in functional medicine. She was my intern for 2 years, over 2 years. Very competitive, super clean diet, great lifestyle. She still had swelling in her fingers and on her belly, and exercise and it was just nothing was working. And then when she ran her genetics, she realized that she was sensitive also to histamine as well as salt, which doesn't mean she had high blood pressure. Most people I see with salt sensitivity actually retain water, just like people who are sensitive to histamine. And what she did was she went on an antihistamine diet and switched her salt consumption to potassium iodide instead of sodium iodide, and the swelling in her fingers and her belly went away. So there's many reasons for stubborn weight that aren't related to calories, and this is only really easily discovered in one's genetics. One other thing that happens in the genetics blueprint is that we give you the highest priority dietary changes and supplements. A lot of people do a lot of guesswork on supplements, and this is an example of this person. Their top ingredient is like sulforaphane, then vitamin D, then an SOD inducers, and omega threes, and antihistamine nutrients. And we guide people in terms of what brands and what products to actually use based on the specific ingredient that's recommended. And the way that these ingredients are determined is what is the fewest number of ingredients that benefit the highest number of highest priority genes. So if you've got 10 inflammatory genes that are behaving that are red or yellow dots, meaning that they're an unfavorable genetic genes that one may have, what is like the one product that will help seven of them, as opposed to trying to find 10 individual products? So can we find the fewest number of products that will help the most number of our genes? So we don't end up with 100 different bottles of things. We just like, let's start with the top five. So this is a sample report. So what we've done is we put the major wins up front where people can look at, okay, on this one page summary, what's my diet? What's the top five supplements? What's my relationship to exercise and recovery and injury? And then what do I need to do around hydration? Genetics is such a massive field. What we've done is simplified it where you can just get started. Yes, the report itself has lots of other content and information in it that's very actionable and supportive. But right up front, it's what you can do. So people ask, well, what do I do? What do I need to eat? Well, here's what people need. This person needs to eat. They need to be on elimination, low histamine diet without caffeine, alcohol, and if they have high blood pressure, water retention, they need to cut salt or switch to potassium version, assuming they don't have excess potassium already. And they need to be mindful eating, and then they need to be on an anti-inflammatory diet. So this is their genetically optimal diet. If people can look at this as well, that's a lot of things. Well, it kind of it is and it isn't. It's mostly telling you what not to have. And you can always work on just one of these pieces, get that locked in, and then move on to the next and next. Because remember, you've got this is for life. So if it seems overwhelming to do all of these at once, you don't actually have to. You can just start with one and then work in the next, then work in the next, then work in the next. Top five supplements. Then we've got exercise type. If someone's more, they're going to have a more optimally perform and kind of more cardio versus sprinting. Then if they are at risk, they need more collagen in their diet because their collagen has a harder time repairing itself. And if they need to focus on a lot more recovery because they've got if they over exercise, then they can injure themselves. And this is particularly for like the CrossFit community. You've got a certain section that over exercises and they get inflamed and basically their muscle tone washes out and they can get more injured. And there's some people that don't easily overinflame from exercise, and these are the people that are valorized in these hyper exercise communities. And then we have a discussion on hydration, which is one of the best ways to deal with inflammation. So then this is just a one-page quick start summary. Then we've got basically this page is divided up into several other pages if I want some more detail or larger font. So this is the diet summary, the supplement summary, a summary on how to hydrate better. A lot of people are dehydrated, and that's one of the best ways to drop inflammation. Full detailed slide on their optimal exercise, and then a slide on the details on how to deal with injury risk and dealing with their collagen. And then we have for the rest of the report, we have uh, we have a section on explaining what is a gene and how do we get gene variations and understanding the difference between different recipes, like between a green dot, yellow dot, and a red dot. What happens between twins if you've got twins with identical genes, then one has a really bad lifestyle versus one has a good lifestyle, you're going to have very different health outcomes, which is the main positive message around epigenetics is that you actually have power to influence how your genes express. And we see this quite most clearly in a twin study. So the only genes we've picked are the ones that you can actually do something about. because there are genes out there that people read about, but there aren't really a lot of things you can do about, and that feels very disempowering. Um, so uh, then we have genes, much more detail on food triggers. So we've got slides on gluten, lactose, alcohol, caffeine, salt, histamine intolerance, food triggers. Then we have entire slides on the eating behaviors, and some people are problems with feeling full, their relationship to bitter foods, their relationship to if they crave sweets, and then do they overconsume sweets, uh, their relationship to fat, tasting fat. Some people crave fat as a flavor and a texture, understanding what good fats are and bad fats are, how to be friendly and protect your fats, your how you metabolize fats. We talked the section on exercise, which has an additional slide on VO2 max, and this is the one on injury and collagen. How to incorporate more daily movement. Then we've got genes on vitamin D, zinc, vitamin C, and your relationship to these three immune nutrients. And then we have sections on inflammation, free radicals, liver detox, methylation, and so on. At the end of it all, what we have is an entire roadmap on how to actually incorporate personal genes into your life. The genes are for life. You've got time, you've got support to implement, and you've got the nutrients and diet recommendations that are personalized to you.
Yes, we can announce our Black Friday special now,
Hmm.
which is 75% off DNA
Hmm.
Decoded. And this is the biggest sale of the year. This is the lowest that it's going to be.
It's as
And
low as it's
this
ever been.
and this is until December 1st only. And you're not just getting the genetic report, you're getting support from us with these live calls. You're getting an entire video course to deeply explain every gene and all the diet and lifestyle recommendations to support you. You're getting the 15% discount ongoing for the professional level supplements as well. And so you can actually just go to the drsamshay.com / DNA Decoded, and you can see the Black Friday deal is here, and you can sign up right here and use the code Black Friday 75. But it's really easy. You just swab your cheek, you send it in, you get access to all the videos, you get the support, and then you
And
receive the
it's
report.
75% off the gold tier. So if we click on,
75% off the gold tier, yeah, which is normally 1997. So it's 75% off 1997, which is a
so
huge
it's
saving.
499 right now.
Yes.
All right. So at this point, what I'm open to questions.
I'm curious as to where I can get the potassium chloride and also, Crystal, where do you get your nettle tea?
So the potassium chloride is on, you can get it off Amazon. It's just potassium chloride as opposed to sodium chloride. There are, if you do potassium chloride, you will want to do a CMP or comprehensive metabolic panel like every quarter or so. It's a very inexpensive blood test just to make sure that your potassium levels don't go too high. But it's the alternative to sodium chloride that people can have water retention issues with.
And I get my
Okay,
Nettles tea from Amazon. It's an organic Nettles tea. And then I get my vitamin C from Designs for Health. And I put both the links in the chat.
great. Thank you.
You're welcome. And Dr. Sam, I have a question because I hear this a lot where people look over their results and they see something that doesn't resonate with them and they say, "Well, that's not me." Like maybe it's the propensity towards sugar. And they say, "Well,
Okay,
that's not
so
me."
yeah, so there's a couple of genes that I hear a lot. Well, that's not me. One is, well, I'm supposed to be super sensitive to bitter, but all these green vegetables, I like the taste of these green vegetables. So that gene must be wrong, therefore I question all the rest of the genes. Well, for the bitter genes, for example, there's three reasons why that bitter foods actually people that shouldn't like actually do like them. Number one, they're already cooking the bitter foods in one or more of the four ways that cut the taste of bitter, so they're masking the flavor of bitter. Number two, the reality is that bitter vegetables over the past 70 years have been bred to be sweeter and sweeter and sweeter, so they're more palatable to market. So what used to be really bitter vegetables are now like not really that bitter. So our genes haven't changed, uh, for a very, very long time, but agriculture has. So what used to be detectable as bitter, it's just there's a mismatch right now based on modern agriculture. And the third reason is that there may be an emotional override, that there may be certain vegetables that there's a very positive association with. And so emotionally, one overrides the flavor of bitter and you prefer that taste, simply because of the emotional override. The other one that comes up is sugar cravings and uh, sugar crave it's like, well, I don't crave sugar. And so some people, I mean, this has happened where people say, well, I don't crave sugar. I said, okay, well, but do you eat a lot of like grains? Like, oh yeah, I love grains. It's like, okay, well, that's just a form of sugar, just kind of a glorified version of it. Or like, I really love potato. I don't eat junk food. I don't eat candy. Only weak people eat that. And it says, well, do you have a lot of potatoes and sweet potatoes? Oh yeah, I love those. I have those as much as I can. Like, okay, well, let's be a little less judgy and a little more self-aware. Um, so there, or people drink lots of fruit juice and they don't realize it's actually just glorified sugar. And then there's some people that uh, that their craving of sugar comes in a form of they chew gum or mints or things like that. So there's kind of like there's hidden ways that they take out their sugar cravings with. And then there's people who crave sugar because they have also additionally underlying metabolic issues, like their mitochondria are damaged or they have adrenal issues or whatever it might be. Um, then then there's people that uh, Crystal, are there any other gene clusters that you see come up that just I'm blanking at the moment?
Those are the main two.
Those are the main two, yeah.
So I do have a thing about the sugar because
Uh-huh.
I'm one of those that's like, I never crave sugar, but I love carbs. So that's one of those things that you're saying, whether it's
Yeah.
potatoes or
Yep.
bread, any of that stuff.
Yeah,
All right, so
and just absolutely that. So sugar is just a much it's just a much more easily accessible. It's what it's effectively what carbs break down into. So
yeah.
you're just having an upstream version of it.
Okay, so then I agree with mine.
Any others you disagree with, Dem, that you want clarity on?
No, it was just some of it was shocking, and then others of it was like, oh, okay. So then the one thing I do want to say is that my issues throughout all of this for through my life is that there really is a DNA thing because it's histamines and which I have allergies and I notice that there's things that happen to my body when I eat it. You know, we talked about my skin
Mhm.
going crazy, but you just don't correlate it. I mean, I do correlate some things with food, but I just didn't realize how damaging making the wrong choices are. When
Mhm.
all this time I thought I was doing better going through the years, learning about, oh, I should have avocados at least once a day. I should have yogurt with fruit and this and that. So it's almost like the changes that I've made to be better are actually hurting me.
In certain ways they are. So this is where food is complicated. So like avocados are very healthy for certain reasons and very unhealthy for certain people with certain genetic predispositions.
Yeah.
So it's complicated, and this is also what makes it frustrating for people. And this is why the genetics testing is so valuable, is because you can actually look at the entire constellation of all the different converging factors around different foods. And I mean, so for example, like some people may need a lot of zinc, and shellfish is really high in zinc, but it's also high in histamine. People may need more omega-3s and to be on a more keto-based diet than as opposed to higher carb, but then they eat lots of avocados, and then they're now flooding themselves with histamine.
Mhm.
So this is why when in that slide where I showed like all the different dots about this person's individual diet, what we're looking at is, you know, eventually converging all of those together into one consistent diet. Now that link that I provide to the antihistamine elimination diet, that usually covers 75% plus of all the dietary concerns, because an elimination diet means you don't have dairy, gluten, um, alcohol, uh,
Which
caffeine.
on that diet, the thing that just I was like, oh my gosh, cheese. If you're gonna say dairy, I'm a cheese lover. I
Yeah.
have it in my freezer, I have it in the refrigerator, I got stuff in the pantry. Like cheese is my everything. And that would be something I wouldn't consider as an issue. But when you see it on paper, it's like, oh my
Mhm.
gosh, it's just right in front of my face, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, and for sure. And this is where the genetics test can be both confronting and relieving, because it's like,
Mhm.
well, we had a good run, Cheese and I, and
Yeah.
and that's it. And it's one of those things it's kind of there's a relief in the inarguability of it. And like you described cheese, Debbie, but I'll also give you another example. Like I lived in New Zealand for 8 years, and there's a lot of alcoholism. I mean,
Mm.
alcoholism next to rugby is the national sport. And the reality is that don't laugh too hard at that, Nicole. Uh the reality is that there's certain there's a lot of um there's a lot of like bro psychology in amongst Kiwi men. And the reality is if I run a functional test like an adrenal test or a stool test or a stress test or whatever it might be, they'll kind of like just brush it off like blokes. They'll be like, oh, I was stressed. I did all right, eight, and they'll just kind of brush it off. But when I show them a genetics test, they can't argue. And this is the one test, this has happened 3 times in my practice where I was talking to someone who I knew was an alcoholic. And I showed them the genetics test. They saw the results for alcohol, and one guy said literally like, "Well, I guess this means I have to stop drinking, doesn't it?" And I said, "In your case, genetically, yes. If you've stated health goals and you ran this test, alcohol is not your friend if you want to keep to these specific health goals. Your health goals are kind of completely sabotaged if you continue to drink." Your choice, but just know that you can't kid yourself anymore. You have to make a decision. And it sounds like you've already made that decision. And I'm very proud of you for making that decision. And he stopped drinking. And he could not argue it. I've had some people try to argue their genetic results. It's adorable when they do. It's cute. I could use the entertainment, but they can't. So I did the same thing. So Debbie, just know that you're not alone. I did the same thing with caffeine. I was having the most bulletproof coffee ever because the podcast said so. And um, I have a red dot in caffeine, so I get caffeine-induced anxiety and depression. And I was fooling myself because I would get lots of anxiety when I would have caffeine. But I was like, look at all this energy I'm supposed to have. I'm making ketones. Look at me, look at me, look at me. And I was just lying to myself. So I've been confronted also when looking at my genetics. I also when it came to my diet. When I ran the carb tolerance test, I was eating a perfect Mediterranean diet, but genetically I'm a low carb paleo borderline keto. And I was like, okay, well, that's inarguable. So I changed my diet.
So
So
that is part two of all this, right? That carb
the carb tolerance
part.
test, yeah. So
Okay,
that
so
one
I'm still
tells
waiting
you
on that.
yeah, if you're more, that one's if you're more based keto, paleo, Mediterranean, high carb, and then how you customize how many carbs you have per meal based on your carb tolerance number and and the size of your fingers, which is we don't have time to go into it during this chat, but it's all explained in the back end. So basically, the context is that um, there's green, yellow, red dots, which is the type of gene you have, but then there's the number of duplicates of a specific genes you have. In this case, the gene that breaks down amylase, that makes amylase in the mouth to break down carbs. So if someone's intestines is a fort and you've got carbs charging the fort, like the Visigoths in medieval times, your number of duplicates of your AMY1 gene is the number of cannons that line the fort to mow down these carbs that are charging your gut. So if it's not the type of cannon that matters, it's the number of cannons that matter.
Hmm.
So you can have between 1 and 20 cannons. I have 2.
Oh,
So I don't do well with carbs. Just it doesn't matter if they're all organic, sprouted quinoa grown in the pure soils of the South Island of New Zealand and picked by left-handed monks on the harvest moon. It's irrelevant. It's the number of it's just it's the amount of carbs. It's not quality, of course, matters, but quantity has as sadly as Napoleon says, quantity has a quality all of its own, which he is referring to like going through 30,000 lives a week or whatever. But it's the quantity matters. So what I realized is that you can't. I was watching. And this is a true story, and you'll get an insight into how my brain thinks. I'm just thinking about this carb tolerance test that people can have between 1 and 20 copies of this gene, and which determines like their diet, and which determines how many carbs they can have. But it didn't make sense to me that someone could like if I have 2 copies, that means I should have 200 calories of carbs a day. Or if I have 10 copies, it's 1,000 calories of carbs. It didn't make any sense because I'm literally watching Game of Thrones as I'm thinking about this. And then I also taught X-ray analysis, went to other chiropractors when I graduated, and I was teaching them how to pass their exams. So you have the convergence of genetics, Game of Thrones, and X-ray analysis. This is all real. This is a real thing. And I'm watching Game of Thrones, and I'm looking at Peter Dinklage, who plays Tyrion Lannister. He's a dwarf, and then he's in real life. He's actually friends with Bjorn Bjornsson, who plays the Mountain. And Bjorn Bjornsson is the strongest man in the world. He's lifted over 500 kg, and Bjorn Bjornsson is his real name. It does sound like the fake name you would give to a Viking descendant man who's a giant who would hold a world record in weightlifting, but it's his real name. Bjorn Bjornsson. Anyway, so they're real friends in real life. And but in theory, both of them can have the same carb tolerance. They could both be a 2. So if it's like, or they could both be 6. So let's say it's a 6. So if it's 600 calories worth of carbs, you know, Peter could barely eat that much, and those 600 calories would barely fit between Bjorn's front teeth. So, like, it doesn't make any sense how you can just give the copy number and say, oh, well, here's your number of calories of carbs. That's nonsense. So I figured out a way. But I figured out how to personalize it because when I studied X-ray analysis, dwarves have very unique finger bones. And I was thinking, wait a minute, what scales roughly with height and weight? The size of your fingers. Peter's longest finger is probably 3/4 the length of my pinky, while Bjorn's longest finger is probably 3/4 the length of my forearm. So the copy number, I said it's the finger rule. So whatever your number is the number of fingers worth of heavy carbs you can have maximum per meal. So this way it scales appropriately based on someone's finger size. So that's what I figured out, and now Fit Genes is kind of adopting that, quite literally a rule of thumb or rule of finger, I would say, because you have to be able to customize it to people's individual sizes. So the copy number is invaluable because the difference between someone who has a 2 like me and someone who has a 10 is they can have 5x the amount of carbs that I do. But then the volume of what that 5x is determined by what size their fingers are. How big? So there's tremendous individualization based on this report. So, any other questions before we wrap up?
I have just one more point, and you brought
Uh-huh.
it up about the breakdown in your mouth. And that is something that is a huge struggle. And I noticed that my husband eats so incredibly slow. So does my daughter. My son and I were just like, there's the food and it's quickly gone. So I did a test here without my husband knowing, but I chewed as much as he chewed. And by his, I'd say, fifth chew, I was gagging. I'm like, oh my gosh. And he went 20, 30 chews past me. And I said, how do you do that? Like, how doesn't that make you just, how do you keep it in your mouth? How do you, and he had no idea what I was talking about. I'm like, that is a really important point. I think I've heard you say it or read you say it, something
So you're saying
where,
that if you chew, the more you chew, the more you have a prone to gag?
oh yeah, I probably chew 4, 5, maybe 6 times, and then I swallow it. Where my husband, and mind you, I knew he was slower, but when I actually went chew by chew with him, I couldn't do it. He was at
I'm kind of
30
so
to
so
my
then I'm a
six.
bit confused. How so? The more you chew, the more liquid your food becomes. So therefore, the
Right.
less like you are to gag. So I'm just trying to
Oh,
understand how.
it goes right down your throat before you're ready to swallow.
Okay.
It's like,
Um. Interesting. So
but I guess my point is that that is
you
something
may be
that's
you
really
may so what
important.
may be happening is that I would look at how you're breathing when you're chewing,
Oh,
because if you're actually placing your tongue back behind to close off your windpipe while you're
yeah.
chewing, because when people are chewing, they're not supposed to be breathing through their mouth as they're chewing because they risk food going through. That's why people, when they're chewing, their tongue should be blocking the back of the back of their tongue should be blocking the back of their throat, and they're breathing through their nose as they're chewing.
Hmm.
So I don't that may be a mechanical thing that's going on.
Interesting.
Yeah,
But the point that I guess, but chewing is really important with your digestive system, right? That's your
absolutely
first
for
thing.
multiple
Mhm.
reasons. Yeah. I want to thank everyone for joining us, and for those of you that are watching after this has been released. And I look forward to seeing you in the upcoming coaching calls.
Thanks, Dr. Sam. Thanks
Thank
everyone
you.
for coming.
Thank you.
Have a good day. Bye.
Bye.